Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to today's case. Before we start, we would like to say our respect goes out to all those that knew Keeley. In Tamworth, England, there was a young woman named Keeley Bunker. She was a vibrant and outgoing 20-year-old who was always up for an adventure. On the 19th of September 2019, Keeley was celebrating her birthday in a big way. She had gotten tickets for a concert at the Birmingham Academy and she was beyond excited to go. She was going with her best friend, Monique Riggins, who she had known for many years. The two friends had always been close and spent tons of time together. They lived close to each other, about 20 minutes apart, so it was easy for them to hang out. After the concert, Keeley and Monique headed to Snob's nightclub in Birmingham to catch up with some of their friends and hang out. They were looking forward to a night of music, laughter, and good company. At the club, Keeley, Monique, and their mutual friend Wesley would spend their evening drinking and dancing, relishing in each other's company. Wesley and Keeley had been childhood friends for several years and had a close bond. As the night came to a close, the trio would share a taxi ride back to their homes in Tamworth. The three friends lived in close proximity to one another, making it easy for them to all ride in the same taxi. Upon arriving at Monique's house, it was almost 4 o'clock in the morning. As they stood outside Monique's house, she asked Keeley if she would like to stay the night. After a brief moment of consideration, Keeley politely declined, thanking her friend for the offer. She didn't want to stay the night at Monique's house since she had a very important interview later that day for a teaching assistant job. Keeley would tell Monique that everything would be fine since she was with Wesley and they would walk together. Keeley and Wesley had known each other since school and were trusted friends. Besides that, Wesley did live near Keeley, so this plan seemed to make sense to Monique. Wesley also told Monique that he would make sure Keeley got home safe since he lived the furthest. The next morning, she never made it to the interview. This concerned her friends and family. Around 5 p.m., since no one heard from Keeley, her parents reported her as a missing person to the police. Since Wesley was the last person to see Keeley alive, officers wanted to talk to Wesley. He explained to them that they had walked together for a portion of the way home, but that they had parted ways when they reached a telephone box close to his house. According to Wesley, that was the last time he saw her alive. As the night went on, Wesley became increasingly inebriated and found it hard to remember the details of his walk home with Keeley. The police officers questioned him, trying to piece together the events of that night and asked if he would be willing to cooperate in their investigation. Wesley, still feeling the effects of the alcohol, agreed to help in any way he could. Around 7 p.m. that evening, Wesley, accompanied by 2 officers, got into a car to recreate the route they had taken that night. They wanted to pinpoint the precise spot where he and Keeley had parted ways. As they drove, Wesley struggled to remember the details of that night, but he pointed out a phone booth, telling the officers that it was the last place he had seen her. However, as the officers delved deeper into their investigation, they asked to look at Wesley's phone. This request seemed to make him panic and he refused to hand it over, which made the officers suspicious. They asked him again, but Wesley continued to refuse, becoming increasingly agitated and defensive.
Okay. Which way would you go home normally?
This way.
Back that way? Yeah? Okay. Is that the way you would walk if...
Yeah.
It's not, obviously, it's not.
No.
It's not what you want is to be back in the police
I just
car.
feel like I'm getting the blame.
No one's blaming you.
Me and my...
You said when I was at the house that all I needed to do was speak to the officer, and then I can go and look for Keeley, and then you take my phone off.
But as my colleague said, at the minute, there's a lot of people involved in what's happening, of which we are PCs, and there are people who are a lot higher up than us who are making decisions.
Yeah. I don't. Cause now, when you say you're going to take my phone, now I feel like you're blaming me.
No, we haven't blamed, mate. We haven't once since we've been sat in this car. I think your dad can vouch. We haven't once blamed you for anything. All we've been told by our bosses that we need to take us on the take on the scene, where it's gone, the route. So have a drive of the route, and then and we are literally just following those instructions. And I know you've got a lot of questions, and I know your parents have probably got a lot of questions, but and I think it's it's obvious when I say that we've been with you, so I can't answer those questions because we've been sat in the car.
And from the police side, they've got like a tick sheet. They have to make sure that there isn't anything on your phone. Yeah. And they have to kind of cross you out.
Yeah, I get
so
this isn't just for the sake of it. They've obviously done it for a reason, and it's to help. Yeah. So.
That's all we want to do. We want to help.
And it's scary, and they understand that it's scary. Okay.
Yeah. I just don't want them to laugh if they go through my Google and.
No, they're not worried about that.
Yeah, no, don't worry about
it. It's the girl, Wes.
Yeah.
But Wes, all we're going to look for on your phone is going to be things that relate to you and her, right? We don't care about your Google. Yeah. We're not allowed to look for stuff like that because ultimately we don't need to do it.
Like, literally,
because it has to be transparent, mate. That's all it is.
But
all right.
He doesn't understand.
Oh, sorry. Because if you imagine you were to show it me, we could. Okay. Just as part of the investigation, mate, I actually need to grab your phone off you.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Right, just grab it, mate.
Yeah, that's fine, mate.
The officers could sense that something was off, and the request for his phone seemed to trigger something in Wesley, causing him to shut down and refusing to cooperate any further with the investigation. While Wesley was being questioned by the police, Keeley's family was still frantically searching for her. They searched high and low, calling out her name and praying for her safe return. They went door to door, asking neighbors if they had seen her, and scoured every inch of their neighborhood in hopes of finding her. They searched parks, abandoned buildings, and even called local hospitals in case she had been found injured. As the night went on, the search team grew larger, and more people joined in the search for Keeley. They were determined to find her, no matter what it took. They searched through the night with no sign of her, and no leads. It was a race against time, and the longer she was missing, the more their hearts ached with fear. Out of nowhere, a blood-curdling scream was heard by the search team. The scream belonged to Keeley's uncle, Jason Brown. He had been out searching, determined to find his beloved niece. He would tell officers that as he was searching for her, he stumbled upon her body around 9 p.m. as he was walking through Wigginton Park. He found her face down in a pond, her clothes torn and disheveled. He managed to spot her as his flashlight just so happened to catch a glint of a bracelet. As he got closer, he saw her hair, and he knew instantly it was Keeley. He stated whoever did this had forced themselves upon her, ended her life, and attempted to cover her body. The discovery of Keeley's body was a devastating blow to her family and friends, and the entire community was left in shock. Her uncle Jason was left inconsolable, and he would never fully recover from the trauma of finding his own niece in such a brutal and senseless way. Another member of the search party gave the following description of the scream they heard. It was the most horrendous scream or shout I've ever heard in my life. The search team rushed towards the source of the scream to find Keeley's uncle Jason standing over his niece's body, half immersed in the pond. Her underwear and clothing had been pulled down her ankles, and she had been strangled and left for dead. Whoever had done this to her was a twisted human. The police arrived at the scene and launched an investigation, and soon after, they arrested Wesley. They released footage of him in the back of the police van, where they informed him that they had found the body of Keeley and that he was now under arrest. The police would then gather all the evidence they could.
Right. Wesley, you need to listen to me. Right. At this moment in time, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder. Okay, you don't have to say anything. You may harm your defence if you do mention my questions until in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Okay? So I'm going to take you to a police station now. Alright, and we'll sort everything else there. So, alright, okay. My colleague here is going to stay with your mum and dad. So, alright, just to keep them safe. Alright. Are you able to scoot over, mate? Is that alright? Because I'll sit next to you, I'll sit here. Alright. Grab your dad's cable, if I can. Yeah, you got it, yeah? Just put your seatbelt on, mate, and I'll sit next to you in a minute. Okay. That's Dad's phone charger.
Dad's phone charger.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We're going to start moving. You know, just step away from the car for me.
Wait a minute, please.
We need to go now.
Just wait a minute, please.
So we need to go now.
I-
You just need to come away from the car for me, please. Good. I'll let the sergeant discuss that with you. All right.
The investigators knew that Wesley was lying, and they were determined to uncover the truth. They meticulously pieced together the evidence, using every tool at their disposal to uncover the truth. They used GPS data from Wesley's mobile phone to trace his movements on the night of the murder and discovered that his version of events was false. The GPS on his mobile phone pinged at a nearby tower and showed that he did not go to a telephone booth and then go home as he had claimed. Instead, they discovered that he had gone away from his home and into Wigginton Park, where Keeley's body would later be found. There was also CCTV footage that showed Keeley and Wesley at 4:23 a.m. walking towards and into the park. The investigators scrutinized the footage, studying every detail, trying to understand what had happened. They also learned that Wesley was inside the park for around 1 hour with Keeley. The GPS data showed that the phone was at the location several times that day. At first, Wesley denied any involvement, but as the evidence against him mounted, he changed his story several times. His first story was that he was with Keeley in the park when she died. He said that as they were walking through the park, he jumped on her back in a playful way for a piggyback, causing her to accidentally fall and fatally hit her head on the gate post. But the evidence didn't match with his version of events. The injuries on her body were consistent with the struggle, and the way the branches were covering her body suggested that someone had attempted to conceal her death. As the investigation continued, the police found more and more inconsistencies. Seeing that the officers weren't buying his initial story, Wesley would continue to maintain that he was innocent, but now he would tell officers a second story. He claimed that he had unintentionally murdered Keeley when they were having consensual intercourse in the park. He said that the two of them started flirting with one another when they were walking home together that night. According to Wesley, Keeley started teasing him, and he stated that it wasn't a touchy type of flirt or anything. It was just looking at each other in a flirtatious way. The police then confronted him with the CCTV footage showing Keeley trying to get away from him. At first, he tried to brush it off as playful behavior, but as the police pressed him further, his story began to change. He told the police that they were merely play fighting, but the footage clearly showed Keeley trying to get away from him. Wesley claimed that when they arrived at the park, they kissed, things escalated, and they engaged in sexual activity. He stated that he began to choke her with his arm from behind while they were having sex, and that, at that moment, he got carried away and he accidentally choked her, ending her life. He then confessed to dragging her body into the pond and covering her with branches to hide what he had done. The police were horrified by the brutality of the crime and the fact that Wesley had tried to cover it up. During the investigation, officers also found Wesley's DNA inside Keeley's body, as well as CCTV, GPS, and DNA evidence pointing to him as the suspect. The investigation had been rigorous, leaving no stone unturned, and the evidence against him was mounting. During the trial, Wesley tried to defend himself by telling the court that he started to panic after Keeley's body went limp. He claimed that he checked her pulse, and when he didn't feel anything, he dragged her body into the pond. He tried to play it off as a tragic accident, but the court saw through his lies. When asked why he never contacted emergency services for assistance when she lost consciousness, he said it just didn't enter his head. But it was clear to the court that he was trying to cover his tracks, trying to evade responsibility for his actions. Several people came forward and told investigators that they had spotted Wesley in the location where Keeley's body would later be found around 10:30 a.m., which is around the time when he would have returned to add more branches to cover her body, trying to conceal his crime. Keeley was also found to have self-inflicted scratch marks on her neck, and these scratch marks would have been from when she panicked and tried to desperately prise herself from the chokehold. She had fought for her life, but in the end, it wasn't enough. The police also found a top that Wesley wore on the 18th of September that contained several bloodstains, and these bloodstains were found to match her DNA. Not only that, but on the sleeve of this top, there was makeup that she was wearing that night and traces of her saliva. The evidence against Wesley was overwhelming. It was clear that he had brutally murdered Keeley and then tried to cover it up. The prosecution team theorized that Keeley saw Wesley as just a friend, but Wesley had a dangerous obsession with her. His ego and entitlement fueled this heinous crime. They also made the point that Wesley showed a complete lack of remorse for his actions. He was not fazed by taking her life, as after taking Keeley's life, he went home and slept like nothing ever happened before returning later to cover her up some more, trying to conceal his heinous act. Also, to take somebody's life by choking requires a significant amount of force. Usually, it takes minutes for somebody to die from strangulation, so his entire story made no sense, and it was clear that he was continuing to lie and manipulate the truth about what really happened in the early hours of that morning. Wesley showed no real signs of remorse. He showed no empathy or remorse for the life he took and the pain he caused to Keeley's family and friends. He was a cold-hearted killer who took pleasure in ending her life and hiding her body. The jury gave their verdict after 8 hours, and Wesley Street was found guilty of premeditated murder. He was given a life sentence with the requirement that he serve a minimum of 29 years and 46 days behind bars. The judge informed Wesley that he might never be released. He will only be released if the parole board is satisfied, and even if he were released, he would remain on license and subject to recall for life. But the judge also added a note that he believed Wesley was a danger to society and should never be released. Following this case, the true character of Wesley Street was exposed. Keeley was not his only victim. Other women found the courage to come forward and speak about their experiences with Wesley. He was accused by 3 other women and found guilty of 7 counts of sexual assault. These offenses took place in 2015, 2017, and 2019.
Welcome the outcome of this week's conviction and today's sentencing, and hope it will bring some comfort to Keeley's friends and family. This devious and manipulative character, someone who repeatedly lied and targeted young women, is now behind bars, and I'm grateful to every single person who helped us reach this conclusion. In particular, the 3 young women who've shown immense bravery in coming forward. As much as I welcome today's sentencing, our thoughts are with Keeley's family, friends and the local community who've lived every minute of this horrendous ordeal. We know the hurt won't go away, but we would like to praise Keeley's families and friends for the dignity and respect they have shown throughout the investigation and the court case.
This monster deserved to spend the rest of his life in prison for the pain and suffering he caused. He was a predator who preyed on vulnerable women and took pleasure in causing them harm. This is going to be the end of the story of Keeley Bunker and Wesley Street, but it's important to remember the victims, their families, and the lessons that can be learned from such a tragic event. Thank you for watching our video. This case serves as a stark reminder of the evil that can exist in our society and the devastating impact it can have on innocent victims and their families. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime content. Until next time, stay safe.